Do you easily trust the perfect lives influencers sell you? What if what looks like a dream on social media can hide the darkest nightmare? For example, this guy had it all: fame, fortune, and a picture-perfect family. His TikTok painted a dreamy love story, a husband and wife living the high life. But behind the filters, the truth was so darker that he eventually ended up doing something unthinkable. But what did he do, and why did he do that? If everything was not right, why did he make it look like a dream-like life on social media? What did he exactly want from his fans and his dear ones? And you see, questions are many. And answers we need you find out. Ali Abulaban's story started as a dream, but eventually turned into a nightmare. It all started with his crazy ability to impersonate characters in movies, particularly Tony Montana from Scarface. The man had it all: voice, demeanor, the whole thing. In fact, his TikTok took off because people couldn't stop watching his gangster impressions, and next thing he knew, he had a huge fan following. But the more popular he became on the internet, the more the lines between his cyber life and reality began to get fuzzy, ultimately resulting in a tragic downfall. Ali met Anna in Okinawa, Japan, when he was stationed with the Air Force there. Anna was a bar girl, and they clicked immediately. A whirlwind romance flourished in a very short time. And as you can guess, eventually they got married, relocated to Virginia, and they had a daughter. From the outside looking in, they seemed to have picture-perfect lives. Somewhere around 2019, Ali started doing TikToks just for entertainment purposes, playing around with impressions. It just so happened people loved his Tony Montana impression. His videos went viral, and with the growing fan base, he began introducing Anna into his videos as well, showcasing what appeared to be a happy, drama-free marriage. But Anna became homesick. San Diego was a reminder of what she was losing: friends, a network, a new beginning. On the other hand, Ali, who always dreamed big, envisioned a move as a stepping stone to the movies. So they broke up shop in early 2021 and moved into a high-rise luxury apartment building in downtown San Diego. That time, Ali got a contracting job on a naval base, which required security clearance, while Anna also worked intermittently. Meanwhile, their TikTok continued to flourish, offering up a filtered, glossy account of their existence. They were making it look like they were living the dream, particularly with their TikTok clips going viral. Anna even reunited with friends she hadn't spoken to in ages, and everybody was excited about their content. But behind closed doors, not everything was good. Ali grew fixated on his online status, controlling, jealous, his paranoia increasing by the day. On the other hand, Anna, craving more independence, started to drift away. Naturally, the arguments worsened, and finally, on September 8, 2021, it all boiled over. Anna made the call to 911, claiming that Ali had pushed her during an argument, and that set everything off. Rather than chill out, Ali streamed on social media, ranting to his audience, angry that she had called the police. The actor who had achieved fame by duplicating fictional thugs now saw his life spin beyond recognition. With the growing frustration grew their drug use, particularly cocaine. And that's when things really fell apart. Ali, who was already a bit controlling, went downhill. Basically, it was the drugs increased his paranoia, and in a flash he became intensely obsessed with Anna, who she was chatting with, what she was doing, and whether she was loyal to him. He began accusing her of cheating on him and telling her she didn't care about him anymore. His possessiveness escalated to outright emotional and verbal abuse. He'd guilt-trip her and even push her for sex. It was as if he was creating things in his own mind, warping reality to suit his own insecurity. And then there was September 8th, the night everything blew. Going live on social media, he bellowed at how Anna was leaving him behind, how he was the only reason she'd even come into the US in the first place. But when he saw that she was in fact speaking with the police, his nerve broke. He panicked, insisted on being removed from speakerphone, then ran away from the apartment, abandoning Anna and her daughter. When the police arrived, Anna reported everything. She described how Ali had lost it over a ridiculous fight over a suitcase. Shoved her so hard she knocked her head on the bed frame, scraping her knee and elbow. The officers took pictures of her injuries and told her to get a restraining order, but ultimately, she didn't follow through. But this was not the end. In the weeks to come, matters did not improve. Ali alternated between ferocious anger and dramatic apology. Late in September, Anna realized that she could no longer stay in this roller coaster ride, there, either with Ali or in the apartment. It wasn't safe to stay anymore, so she packed her bags, took her daughter, and stayed with a friend. Ali, however, would not leave the apartment. One moment, he'd send her tearful video messages attributing his actions to drugs and his bad past. The next, he'd shame her publicly, posting their arguments online, insulting her, and even threatening to report her immigration status. It was a never-ending cycle of abuse and manipulation. Between July and October 2021, it was the neighbors who called the police on them, not once, but 9 times, because they became extremely concerned for Anna's well-being. And by September, Anna had decided the marriage was over. And to make matters even more complicated, she began dating Rayburn Barron, a friend Ali had always hated. Even after the breakup, Ali refused to vacate the apartment. Finally, however, something was worked out. Anna and her daughter were to move back in, while Ali moved into a hotel in Mission Bay, courtesy of his father. But even with that space, the drama wasn't finished yet. Ali had always been jealous, but things started going very dark as his paranoia increased even more. He wanted to control every little aspect of what Anna did, questioning her, accusing her of lying, bombarding her phone with messages. The more suspicious he became, the more desperate he was to keep an eye on her. Believing she was cheating, he went so far as to use their daughter's iPad to spy on her. He installed Discord on it and left it in the apartment, making it his own listening device. Then came October 21st, 2021. Now we will reveal exactly what happened that day in fine detail. But before that, we need a little favor from you. Just press the subscribe button down there. It will keep us motivated to do all the good work. Thanks, let's resume the story. In the morning, Ali used a key card he had been hiding to slip into Anna's apartment. He discovered the iPad, turned on the Discord app, and configured another app on his phone so he could listen. Live. And then he slipped out before she returned. Later that day at 2 p.m., Anna returned home with her friend Rayburn. Meanwhile, Ali, still eavesdropping through the iPad, heard her giggling with another guy. And that was all he could take. He lost it. Anger, drugs, and the weapon he carried drove him into a frenzy as he leapt into his Jeep and drove directly to the apartment. He pulled up in front of the Spire San Diego parking garage, abandoned the Jeep, and ran inside. Security cameras captured him sprinting down the ramp. At 2:53 p.m., he began an audio recording on his phone, pushing it into his pocket. And just 2 minutes later, he entered the elevator, cold and calm, even though he had a gun hidden under a loose black sweatshirt. He swiped the key card, pressed the button for the 35th floor, and you won't believe how even chatted with some people inside, maintaining his cool. At 2:58 p.m., the second those elevator doors swung open, he sprinted down the hall. Nest camera video captured him rounding the corner, running toward Anna's door. The video caught the thud of his pounding feet. Then he swiped the key card, flung the door open, and after that, Anna's scream pierced the air. A split second later, the metallic clang of a bullet on the floor rang out. And then came the shooting. First for Rayburn. Ali entered the living room, reloading, firing 4 quick back-to-back shots. As a result, Rayburn was fatally injured, 2 head, 1 neck. Anna just got stunned in fear. She shrieked while Ali once again reloaded and shot just 1 bullet point blank between her eyebrows. But he wasn't finished yet. Ali snapped photos of the bodies, the scene, all of it. Then between 3:07 and 3:09 p.m., he sent those pictures to his parents and a friend. It was as if he wasn't even in the real world anymore, capturing it all like it was some sick trophy. In moments, he was out in the corridor, screaming that he had murdered Anna. No panic, no remorse, except when he turned to speak with his mother. That's when something broke, but even that was done with a flat, cold voice. It wasn't remorse over what he'd done, merely regret for what it would mean for her. Ali Abulaban called 911 just a dozen minutes after the murders. He sounded like a man who had just discovered a nightmare, reporting that he'd discovered his wife and another man dead. But here's the catch. He wasn't calling as some random witness. He identified himself to the dispatcher as Anna's husband, dropped some details, then hung up. Meanwhile, police were already racing to the Spire building. But Ali? He was nowhere close to the crime scene by then. He had already gone to collect his daughter from school. ensuring he would not be present when the police arrived. When officers entered the apartment building, they were greeted with a violent scene. 2 individuals shot and killed. It wasn't long before they were able to compile information about a suspect and an escape vehicle. Soon enough, they found Ali. He didn't run away. In fact, he pulled over himself. But what really stuck with everyone was what he said to his little daughter as he was being arrested. "I'll be gone for a long time." You see, just like that, a child's world was also shattered. Accused on 2 charges of first-degree murder, Ali was behind bars as detectives delved deep. They obtained warrants for it all: his vehicle, his apartment, even his search and social media history. They scoured through videos, voice messages, photographs, anything that could help put together what actually transpired. And the more they discovered, the clearer it became. This was no crime that was done on the fly. This was pre-planned. Ali was more than a mere suspect. He had a background history of acting out larger-than-life roles on the internet, especially playing Scarface, The Godfather, traditional hard-boiled roles. Even while in jail, he couldn't drop that role. His tantrums and instability landed him in the headlines, portraying a man who existed in his own perverse world. As the May 2024 trial loomed, the question on everyone's mind was this an act of passion or premeditated execution? Prosecutors were adamant. Ali couldn't cope with Anna leaving him. He was controlling, jealous, and when she finally left, he lost his temper, but not in a blind fury. They claimed he thought it out, armed himself, broke into that apartment uninvited, and shot without remorse. The reason? You see, losing your love to someone else is far more painful than just losing them, because it also hurts your ego. But the defense was another story altogether. They didn't dispute that he fired the shot, but they argued it wasn't pre-planned at all. They characterized Ali as a man who had been emotionally traumatized for years, struggling with mental illness, addiction, and a history of problems. Meanwhile, Anna had also deliberately pushed his buttons, pushing him to the breaking point until he snapped. They wished to reduce the charges to second-degree murder, contending that his behavior was simply a response to overwhelming emotional distress. But the prosecution wasn't convinced. They kept referring to the hard facts. Ali didn't snap that day. He arrived armed and prepared, and he knew exactly what he was going to do. That, they contended, was what differentiated a crime of passion from a premeditated double murder. And so the trial would resolve: was Ali Abulaban a broken man who snapped, or a murderer who knew precisely what he was doing? So the trial was dramatic, and one of the most dramatic moments was when the prosecution called up the defendant's internet browsing history. And guess what? They accused him of some explicit search terms, and he completely freaked out, denying, demanding evidence, and essentially saying their accusations were false. It seriously got tense. Finally, testimony came out that the defendant and his wife had a history of angry blowouts, both exchanging verbal blows. He even confessed that his use of drugs, particularly cocaine, only made things worse. But still, he testified for 3 days, attempting to get the jury to believe that this was a crime of passion and not premeditated murder. When his own attorney asked him questions, he remained fairly calm, recounting his version of events. But the moment the prosecution began badgering him about the specifics, his facade cracked. He became defensive, lashed back at them, particularly when they raised issues that did not favor him. The prosecution wasn't convinced by his side of the story. They portrayed him as violent, controlling, someone who couldn't stand losing control over his wife. And when they asked him what he did immediately after the murders, he became even more aggressive. Surprisingly, his mother also testified, exposing the jury to his history. She described how bad things were at home, how his dad was physically abusive, and how she tried to protect him from it. She acknowledged that Ali was exposed to domestic violence as a child and had issues with his mental health, and when you add drugs to that mix, it was pretty much a recipe for disaster. After almost a month, the trial concluded, and both parties made their closing arguments. The prosecution tried to convict him of first-degree murder, arguing he knew exactly what he was doing. The defense was fighting an uphill fight. They pushed the heat of passion defense hard, hoping the jury would convict him of voluntary manslaughter rather than first-degree murder, which would carry a much reduced sentence. So, at the point, all in the jury's hands now. But when the verdict was announced, it was unequivocal. No hesitation. No second guessing. The jury member found Ali Abulaban guilty of first-degree murder for both victims. Then there was the sentencing hearing, and the courtroom was heavy with emotion. Ali finally had his turn to speak, and he didn't mince words. He wasn't there to apologize, he was there to protest. He was angry at how quickly the jury deliberated, complaining that they spent less time on it than he had on the stand. He said they weren't interested in justice, only revenge. But nothing he said changed anything. It sounded more like an angry rant. Then it was the judge's turn, and he wasn't having any of it. Ali had made a 10-minute speech, but it sounded rehearsed, like he was an actor playing a role so that he'd receive a lighter sentence. And the judge had witnessed all along. He knew the act, and he even mentioned the Scarface clips Ali had produced, stating that it was as if he'd entered the character of a ruthless murderer, without remorse. If Ali cried any tears in that courtroom, the judge stated, they were for Ali, not for the people he killed. As a result, the judge levied the maximum sentence, life in prison, no chance of parole. It means Ali Abulaban would never again walk outside. The judge made it clear he would die in prison. This entire case wasn't about the legalities. It actually highlighted something much, much larger: domestic violence and how crucial it is for victims to come forward. The tragic thing is, the drama became even more enormous because this couple had a large TikTok following. But the essence of the story was something that occurs far too frequently. Those people online had observed their relationship to be perfect, fun, joyful, full of family moments, but were unaware of the abuse and control that went on behind closed doors. And all those adorable posts, just a facade for something much uglier. This is another big proof of what people say. Don't compare your life to what you see on Instagram, TikTok, or other social media. What's your take on this? Did you also follow them back then? Tell us in the comment section below. And while this case was about someone who often mimicked characters from cinemas, this next case is even more mind-bending that itself can beat any thriller cinema in Hollywood. Because, come on, in what thriller have you seen a regular person come back after being buried underground? Subscribe to this channel for more true crime content like this. See you soon.